If you've ever experienced being out of action for weeks on end and then finally getting to go back into training and competition only to find yourself getting injured again, then this video is for you. This problem happens because of two things that you think are the same but are actually quite different, and that is fitness and tolerance. Everyone makes the mistake of feeling fit and ready to get back into it, only to forget that tolerance doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready to get back. The core concept in this video is that both fitness and tolerance are both built by repeated exposure to a stimulus over time. However, the major mistake here is that most people, most athletes, they tend to think that they are both the same thing, and that if you're feeling fit and ready to go, then therefore you are fit and ready to go, and that could not be further from the truth. So the important distinction to make here is that fitness is a general capacity. So it's your cardiovascular output, it's your strength, it's your power, it's your work capacity. Whereas tolerance, that is more specific to an actual task. So how much load of running can your Achilles handle? How much heavy bench pressing can your shoulder handle? How much sprinting can your hamstring handle, for example? So you can be fit and capable of handling all of these stresses, but your tissues may not be ready to tolerate specific things that you're exposing them to. The key mechanism here is that tissues adapt to the specific stresses that are placed upon them. And this is why you can be considered fit, but you can still get injured. A really good example of this is someone who, for example, is a really fit rower and they've got good tolerance to rowing, but if they go out and start running, but they build that running volume way too quickly or that running intensity way too quickly, and then they get hurt, they're wondering why, man, I'm really fit, why have I gotten hurt doing this? It's because that tolerance to running just isn't quite there. What happens when you get injured? When you get injured, you generally are going to modify or stop the activity that's caused you the injury in the first place. So if you are an athlete who runs or is in a sport that's required to run quite a bit, you're going to have to reduce your running to a lot less or potentially zero, depending on the injury. But if we can modify running to something else, say we're going to do echo bike, rower, maybe even arm ergometer if your legs are out of action, you can keep your fitness generally pretty high in this circumstance. And now you've got yourself to this point where your fitness is still really high because you've been hammering away at a different modality, while the running has calmed right down, and then you get back into running again because you're feeling good and you're feeling fit, and suddenly you get injured again or something flares up and you're wondering why that is. Again, it's because that tolerance just wasn't there because it's dropped over a number of weeks while you haven't been doing that specific running conditioning and you've been doing other things. And this is commonly where the biggest mismatch is going to be in terms of fitness and tolerance, and it's during that rehab period. It's something you just need to keep in the back of your mind when you are in this scenario, or otherwise it could come back to bite you. This feeling of readiness, it's going to give you a false signal of what you're capable of. And another really good example here is a patient that I treated in the clinic who was going for a new bench press PB. He came and saw me because his shoulder had flared up from all the bench pressing overload that he had been doing. So he typically went from just bench pressing once per week. He now wanted to start bench pressing 3 times a week, and he jumped into doing that with really high loads. He was doing pretty much the same bench press session every single time he was in the gym. So what did we do? We took away that specific bench pressing volume while still allowing him to be able to do his general pressing movements. So for example, instead of doing his main bench press that he was trying to get really strong at, we reduced the range of motion and brought his hands in a little bit more so that it just took a little bit of an emphasis away from the shoulder. We did some neutral grip dumbbell pressing and just remained in with a mostly pain-free range of motion. And we trained a lot of movements that helped fix some of those weaknesses that were in his pressing activity. So he was a little bit stiff in his shoulders, so we used movements to try and open them up. And he was a little bit weak through other areas, and his rotator cuff as well, which we tried to build upon in ways that weren't hurting his shoulder and allowing it to settle down and become less painful. However, what he didn't tell me is when he felt really good again, he jumped straight back into bench pressing, heavy 3 times a week, and his shoulder flared straight back up. And even with all of the education in the world that I gave him about this, he still was so keen to just get that bench press PB. In the end, he didn't really care. He just wanted to push through the pain, put up with it, and just hit a PB and move along. However, if you do want to have a really fun and joyful training experience, getting your rehab done properly in the first place is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of lost training joy, because it will just be a better experience doing it right. But the main point I want to hammer home here is that his actual pressing fitness was not the problem. It was just his tolerance to that specific bench pressing movement that he was doing that was causing him that problem. So whilst his fitness was there, that specific tolerance to the bench press was not. The key concept I need you to remember here is that feeling ready is subjective. It's something that you just have a feeling of. But tolerance and what you can tolerate is more an objective marker. It's tissue specific, and it's something that you need to build deliberately over time. Why does this catch some athletes out? Well, the thing is, fitness can be maintained relatively easy through modified training. However, sometimes tolerance takes weeks or perhaps even months to rebuild, even with deliberate training. You can have the most optimal rehab program, but it's still not going to give you a shortcut back to getting your tolerance right back up there. And as I have been saying all along, this mismatch in timelines is a really big issue that athletes have, and why they often return far too early and get injured and suffer recurring injuries over and over and over again. How do we now build tolerance properly? This is something that you need to get right so you can return to sport without this injury becoming a recurring injury. Step 1 is we need to gradually reintroduce the specific stimulus that has been causing us problems in the first place. It's not something that you need to jump straight back into at your old training volumes, because that's not going to work. Make sure you are increasing one variable at a time. You're either going to increase volume, intensity, or frequency. It cannot be all 3 of those things at the same time. And the reason for that is, if something does flare up or you get injured again, you're going to know exactly at what point your current tolerance levels are at. If you're increasing all 3 at once, you're going to have no idea about which way to go next time you come back to it. So you need to either pick adding a little bit more volume, whether that's distance or time or sets or reps, etc. You're going to either add a little bit of intensity, so that could be load or speed, or you're going to add frequency, which is an extra session, and that's across the course of either a week or a fortnight or a month, whatever. But make sure that you are not just doubling your workload in that extra session by completely copying the other session that you have been doing. So you need to keep that in mind as well. So the simple framework you can use to check if your tolerance is increasing post-injury is this. Make sure you journal. Number 1, you're going to take a diary of how you felt during the activity. So again, on this subjective pain scale, you're going to rate how much it hurt to do that specific thing, 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. If it's at a 3 or less, then you've got the green light to continue. If it's around a 4 or a 5, make sure you're monitoring that. If it goes beyond a 5, you're probably going to want to cut back a lot, or you're not quite ready to get back into it just yet. The next thing you want to monitor is how you've pulled up in the hours after doing that activity. Again, you're going to monitor, am I really stiff? Has pain flared up? Or is my function gone down? So like if I lost range of motion, has my joints swollen up? Those kinds of things are the things you want to monitor post-activity. And then you also want to monitor the next 24 to 48 hours post. So how have you woken up the next day? If you've woken up the next day in a little bit of pain, but you're still functional, so when I say a little bit of pain, again, about that 3 out of 10 or less, but you're still functional, it's not really stopping you being able to do the things you need to do in your day, then it's probably okay to slowly progress a little more, or you at least want to hold your volume where it's at until those symptoms settle a little bit more. If pain dramatically goes up and your function dramatically goes down and things have swollen up quite a bit, then you've definitely pushed the needle too far and you need to pull it back once that flare up settles down again, and restart that progressive process and continue to monitor how you feel. Because if you're getting too many of those symptom flare-ups that within the next 24 to 48 hours, you are consistently pushing yourself far too hard. So make sure you monitor that. That is going to be your biggest key in whether you can progress or not, and whether or not you are actually building tolerance. Now remember, re-injury, because you just feel better after returning to training or sport, it's not bad luck and it's not because you're fragile. It's usually because your tolerance just hasn't caught up to your fitness yet. And this is usually related to the main concept of this channel, and that's load management. And for more information on load management concepts and how you can use it to your advantage to stop getting injured or get over a persistent pain or injury, I have a couple more videos just here that you can watch that are going to help you get there and get back to this joyful training experience we're all looking for.